And we are live.
Good morning, everyone. It's V, the Grill Economist, coming to you live this morning. It's Monday, 9 a.m. on the eastern seaboard of the United States, and it is time to get down with us. We have our special guest on, London Paul, from the SiriusReport.com. And folks, if you haven't gone to the SiriusReport.com, I suggest you do so. Subscribe to his member services that he has over there. Folks, for less than the price of a latte, a seasonal beverage over at Starbucks. Why buy one when you can get one free at Starbucks when you can go to the SiriusReport.com, get yourself your daily briefings for less than $5 a month, $4.75. It's an amazing deal. Get it right now while it's hot. Get it right now while prices are still low, because God knows the way the Sirius Report is going. Those prices will be increasing as membership increases over there. So check them out. And also check us out, roguemoney.net. We've got some great articles up there. Also, check out our podcasting, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button. What else am I missing? Yes, our sponsors as well, remaincom.net, our official services sponsor right now, remaincom.net, whether you want to get the gold USB to surf the web anonymously, or you need to get your credit repaired, go from a 500 to an 800 and get yourself cleaned up, or you want to get some money to, I don't know, invest in cryptos or pay off debt or whatever the heck it is you want to do. These guys can get you up to $600,000 unsecured from their network of 335 lenders. That's just massive. So that all out of the way, guys, what's going on this morning? We've got a lot to cover, and more importantly, CJ, what's going on later this afternoon? That is going to be a bombastic pay-per-view like event, CJ. This is going to be the Super Bowl of all alt media stuff, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, I almost didn't sleep last night, V. I was so excited for the show that we're able to put together. I want to thank our contributors that helped put it together. Paul, yourself for joining us. So at noon today, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to 2 p.m., we are putting together a very special roundtable discussion regarding the Middle East, the geopolitical strategies, the outcomes. So we're going to be having Jim Willie joining us, London Paul, and Junior, yourself, V, and then also W is going to be joining us. So we're going to be doing this live. I think it's maybe a first for this. Most of these roundtable discussions are usually recorded and released later on. So we're very excited to be bringing you this broadcast. We are changing our schedule up just a tad bit today. London Paul is joining us today for a full hour of Rogue Mornings. And then we are going to bring him in and include this in the Sirius Report. We're going to be scratching that program at 10 o'clock so that way we can get ready for that noon broadcast and get excited about it, V.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm excited for it as well. This is the pay-per-view event. And once again, CJ, run down the guests for the audience so they can hear this again so it's loud and clear. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jim Willie, the Golden Jackass, and Jim, hopefully you're okay. I know that there was an earthquake there in Costa Rica, so hopefully
Oh,
your
wow.
family, hopefully your friends, everyone's okay. We also have London Paul joining us of the Sirius Report, Ken Shortgun Jr., the Daily Economist, yourself, V, the Grill Economist, Rogue Money, and W, the Intelligence Insider. Folks, it does not get better than this. And yes, V, if we could put it on pay-per-view, we would, because it's just going to be that exciting of a show.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
just it's just such an important time. And just so everyone understands the background behind this is that I think it's now more time than ever to get and I'm quoting from Jim, he talked about this in his last broadcast in terms of a game plan and in terms of what is happening. It's not easy, the moves and everything's happening. So we want to bring the very best minds in the new media together to try to game plan it. Talk about the strategies, potential outcomes. Uh, like I said, I barely sleep last night. I tossed and turned. I was so excited, ready to go.
Man, I'm excited to do this as well, man. I mean, just to be with these amazing group of individuals. These are some of the smartest guys out there. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be absolutely exciting. And we're going to be running down the litany of topics, especially with the world, especially how things are ratcheting up in the Middle East, the last legs of the cabal, what kind of desperation plays they're going to be making here. Um, Massive, massive, massive things that are ahead for us. And I recommend all of you Share this with your friends, subscribe, share, like, do whatever you can. And every single person that's going to be coming on today, later in the afternoon over here, I recommend and I request that all of you support them as well. Look, we don't have big advertisement budgets. We don't have corporate media sponsoring us. We don't have any of that. It's just we're grassroots. We're as grassroots as it gets. It's important that we support everybody here. Guys like London Paul, Jim Willie, Ken Shorgen. W doesn't have a site. He's elusive. I mean, whenever he comes out of his Cold War submarine is when he, pops up. But anyway, with that all out of the way, London Paul, sir, how are you?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Yeah, I'm fine. And yourself?
I'm hanging in there, man. I'm nursing a cold. I was sick over the weekend, but I'm feeling better. So I'm looking forward to be fueled and ready for takeoff later on this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredibly interesting because you will get diverse opinions and diverse views, which is always a good thing. No, there's no point in anybody assuming that they know everything. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Absolutely.
In my kind of very understated way, but that's what I'm like. So.
Exactly. Oh man, CJ, where do you want to start this, brother?
You take us where you want to go, V. You take us where you want to go.
I guess we could start off with, I think Pepe Escobar so aptly, and one of these days we got to get Pepe on. But one of the things that Pepe has always said so aptly, he has a great name of coming out with the most amazing nomenclatures for the United States and the cabal that's running the United States. And he terms and coins the term exceptional stand. And it's funny because these, again, is one of those marketing linguistics that are out there. This almost like an NLP type programming that when people hear that we're an exceptional country, it gives you a false sense of pride, number one. Number two, it gives you a false sense of that we're somehow like we have like sainthood like status, like we're like saints or something. When we've in the last 50 years overthrown 30 democratically elected countries. So the question is exceptional stand running low on troops and troop quality? Because right now, Paul, I don't know what your take on this, brother, but right now, and also CJ, you can comment as well. It seems as if right now the Army is removing its standards it's going to remove its standards. It's going to allow soldiers that have a history of bipolar disorders, mutilation, and all these other things, these mental problems, to enlist. I mean, this is insanity, man.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's indicative of something we kind of touched on, I don't know, quite a few weeks back, where the problem, I think, with the US military, a lot of people, because of, Iraq war, Afghanistan, Syria, for that, I mean, though the US hasn't had an official presence, I think there's a lot of people who are in the military who've just decided they wanted to leave. They've had enough. They've got out. They're finding it very hard to recruit people in the process. And I think the numbers, I mean, we don't know exactly, but I think the numbers are kind of tailing off. And therefore, they're just having to go, well, we still need to maintain military personnel at certain levels. And therefore, we're just going to have to take anyone. But let's face it, if they start recruiting people who have questionable credentials to do so, what are they going to do when they put them in a battlefield? Never mind when they're training with live arms. What's going to happen? I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, but it's indicative of the fact that the US military is just falling apart. We know from the Obama era there's a lot of disgruntled military who were just had enough of Obama's foreign policy, which has basically meant, I think, probably every day he was in office, the US was at war with someone. And I think, the chickens have come home to roost, and basically they just can't recruit people anymore and get decent people. So they're just going, well, what are we going to do? We'll just have to lower the bar, but in the process, it's going to be disastrous, of course.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. CJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what Paul just stated is perfectly correct. I think another aspect too, V, is if you take a look at the disservice, I think it's one of the greatest scars of America's history is our disservice, our disgratitude to our veterans. And I always state on our shows anytime it comes around in terms of Veterans Day and for our vets, thank you. So thank you for your service. And I'm always clear to state, V, is that I do support our troops. However, what I do not support corrupt politicians, how they blindly put our military in harm's way. Every war is a banker's war. You take a look at the suicide rate of veterans, it's like 2 and 3-fold of average Americans. I personally have witnessed a brother-in-law who served over 25 years, retired out of the Marines. Thank goodness he's transitioned out. He's working. His family's come together. I've seen that sacrifice that they have made with moving the family apart. I mean, that's a huge commitment that a lot of Americans wouldn't ante up to do. It's a huge commitment, but I think in part that it's not the commitment that scares Americans. I think it's the lack of leadership, federal government level, that just openly sends our troops into harm's way consistently, perpetual state of war. And that's what I think is driving down not only new recruits, but also re-enlistment of service members.
Yeah, absolutely correct, my man. Absolutely correct. Russia buys up gold. I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was going to say, you're absolutely right with regard to the treatment of veterans. I mean, you have similar problems in the UK where people come out and they have PTSD, and that's just putting a very broad sort of tag to what the problems are. And there's no support for people. And also we see huge problems with homeless ex-forces personnel. Mm-hmm. And it's staggering the amount who end up in that situation. And it's completely unacceptable, and that's being polite because we're live, that kind of thing goes on, but it's very endemic. And of course, if you treat veterans that way, then of course people are going to go, well, hang on, if I'm going to put my life on the line for my country and that's how you're going to treat me, well, I'm simply not going to join.
Yeah, absolutely. Russia's buying up gold and getting into blockchain. Meanwhile, the U.S. keeps printing and printing dollars. Paul, what's your take, my man?
Well, we've talked a lot. I mean, Russia and China, but we're focused on Russia, have been buying enormous amounts of gold for a long time, particularly China more than Russia. And I've said this, and people can disagree, but Russia has around 40,000 tons of gold. They've got more gold than China. A lot of this is from the days, even during the Tsar era, they managed to prevent the gold being stolen by the cabal. Yeah. Now, and Russia continue to buy it, and it's obvious because they want a gold-backed currency. The other thing, of course, is that, yes, and we've talked about blockchain, and I said weeks ago that blockchain and cryptocurrencies they were very much interested in. They've announced they're bringing out their own cryptocurrency. It is going to be gold-backed. People will disagree. So there's a big focus. They very much believe in gold and sound money, but they also very much believe in cryptocurrencies. Not necessarily how everyone agrees, but yeah, meanwhile, you're absolutely right. In the West, there's a big emphasis on paper. Everything's paper. It's all buy into stocks. The stock market goes to 50,000, 100,000. And everyone thinks that's a benchmark of the US, or in the UK's economy, this FTSE getting to 7,500. And of course, it's absolute nonsense, but that's a complete mind shift sort of difference between the West and Russia, which is sort of straddles between the West and East, obviously, effectively Eurasia. And it's the same with China. I mean, yeah, certain nations have more emphasis. Germany's kind of recently shown a lot more interest in buying gold, and interestingly, of course, even in the UK, you're starting to see it. And for the small retail investors, big interest in silver at the moment. As fast as they get it, it's selling, but it's small quantities relatively. But yeah, they know the writings on the wall. They know exactly what's coming, and the West still largely just is comatose and has no idea of what's about to happen. Even though, because as far as they're concerned, what Russia and China do is irrelevant and makes no difference, when we know it's absolutely to the contrary. But I'm sure there's plenty of people who are in the West, in the US, in the UK, who are taking necessary steps to diversify out of paper and into other assets, and people can make their choice appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely correct. They're shoring themselves up for the future. Speaking of blockchain, we've got a tale of two Bitcoins here, buddy. We got Bitcoin Cash. SegWit 2 got smashed. And we're looking at Bitcoin Cash really getting up there, man. What's your take?
Yeah, well, it's already transitioned a little bit of the last 2 hours. It's kind of reversed again, V. And I think what we're witnessing here is some huge manipulation in the cryptocurrency space, and I think they're doing it for. I think that they're purposely doing this to try to keep people out of the crypto market. In the last 24 hours, the swings between traditional Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash have just completely reversed again. Now Bitcoin is going back up, Bitcoin Cash is dropping again, and this is literally within the hours. There's some players in that space, that top 1% that owns, that are purposely manipulating the volatility of the cryptos to keep people from buying, investing in the cryptos. I think that that's what we're witnessing right now.
Absolutely. In this case, it's very interesting to see that. Without a doubt, there's definitely some volatility there. Paul, what's your take, sir?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I actually was kind of interested. I didn't track it exhaustively, but I did look over the weekend, and CJ's absolutely right. I mean, Bitcoin Cash went through the roof. It's kind of tailed off and dropped back, and Bitcoin itself kind of fell. I think it was hit around about. It may have even got to $5,000 at one point. Now it's kind of back around 6,000, so it's, or maybe a bit higher, even maybe 6.2, maybe. So it's kind of back almost to what it closed at on Friday. Yeah, undoubtedly there is huge manipulation, and there are people doing it purely to make massive profits in terms of fiat. That's irrefutable. I think the thing that concerns me regarding Bitcoin is when the CME started talking about, well, we're going to introduce futures contracts, and people can go, basically we're going to have derivatives, and you can go long and short, and we want to regulate this market. And okay, it's all words, but it concerns me that they're even saying it, and what potential do they have to manipulate the market with derivatives, because we know this is exactly what has caused mayhem in the gold and silver markets for years now. I mean, they're talking by the end of this year having these contracts in place. Is that going to manipulate the price? I mean, whatever anybody's perspective is on Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, whether you think, whether you agree with it, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, it does concern me when you've got the CME making these comments and kind of alluding to the fact that they feel like they're going to have some influence and control. And I think to dismiss it as though they don't have the capability to do that would not be a wise kind of decision to make. I do think they have the potential. It doesn't detract from the fact that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are here to stay. I've said this before. Blockchain is here to stay. I'm not sure it will necessarily revolutionize things quite as quickly as people say, but in the future, absolutely. And probably more so in a post kind of cabal financial world, it will definitely really, really accelerate in its adoption. And that's why China and Russia will do what they do. And people might not like the fact it's asset backed, but they're very big exponents of this. They don't like Bitcoin for the reasons they do, because they don't like the lack of regulation. That's their choice. But it doesn't detract from what Bitcoin is or what it does. But I do think, yeah, there is manipulation, definitely. And this CME thing, I think, is something that would concern me. And time will tell, just because, I mean, you saw on Friday in the gold market, they just dumped $4 billion worth of paper contracts to smash the gold price.
Without 1 ounce
admittedly,
changed.
Sorry?
Without even a
Say
single
again?
ounce. Without even a single ounce being traded hands.
Yes, exactly. It's just paper contract. Effectively, it's just derivatives smashing prices. Now, I mean, I don't know who's done it and who's actually responsible for that. But imagine if someone dumps a load of paper contracts in with derivatives into to Bitcoin and smashes and tries to smash the price. Now, the thing that would concern me is that Bitcoin, as we know, is very volatile. Now, that volatility works both ways. It can be very advantageous when the price gets hammered. If people have bought in today, they're already sitting, 25, 30% up. But it can work against you. And the thing that might, and what the whole purpose of smashing the paper, gold and silver market is I think they genuinely think people are going to sell their precious metal, and they don't. They're just, in fact, people use it as an opportunity to buy more. But with Bitcoin, bear in mind there's a lot of novice investors joining who've heard about cryptocurrencies, are new to the game. They may get seriously scared if the price drops 20, 30% and then some more because someone decides to smash the market. And that, I think, is something that needs to be watched, and we have to see with interest. And I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just stating that's what they've said. We've got no way of knowing the reality of how that will unfold, but it's certainly something that concerns me and is something to watch out for. And because there is a history of smashing gold and silver, and they also talked about referring to it's not a cryptocurrency anymore. Bitcoin's an asset, and there's always been this argument between is it an asset or is it a currency? Now, if they're going to try and treat it as an asset, then what's their rationale and reasoning behind that? I suspect that might have some feed into why they're also going to try and up the ante in tracking people who make profits to tax them, because there has been a low return on people. Well, so it's said, and we don't know whether this is true, but people in terms of disclosing profits they make and paying appropriate capital gains tax. So yeah, I think it was classic manipulation, but there are some other things that are kind of brewing, and I'm less concerned. I don't really care what people like Diamond says about it, or for that matter, why Goldman's keeps now pumping it and saying this is going considerably north. That bothers me as much as Diamond saying to the contrary. So there is manipulation. It's just whether in the long term this becomes a less of a problem or more of a problem. I think that's the problem. That's my concern anyway.
Speaking of profits over here and the volatility, it seems as Walmart is shifting its retail strategies as it raises prices on its food and certain household items on their website. CJ, what is this all about?
Before we jump to that, V, I think it was in the deck last week, and I meant to go over it, but just to break it down just real quick, is the latest Treasury numbers that were put out in terms of U.S. Treasuries, and it's very eye-opening. What is happening as the drift away from the dollar dominance is occurring. V, this particular report that was released shows that the U.S. federal government debt, obviously China is the second largest. How much now the Federal Reserve owns the majority of Treasury. So the breakdown occurs like this. So China is still a little over $1 million to U.S. Treasuries, followed by Japan. The eye-opening figure is the fact that now the Federal Reserve owns $2.4 trillion in U.S. Treasury. So I think we're going to see that the escalation of Russia moving to gold, the other countries, they're not putting their money anymore in the dollar. That's a very concerning figure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the other point worth making is on the TIC report that produces the treasuries, they basically put a disclaimer in saying that the data may not provide a precise accounting of individual countries' ownership of treasury securities. I mean, how long and broad is that statement, and what does it mean? And how accurate are these figures anyway that they produce? I think that is something else. But you're absolutely right. The dumping of treasuries is far greater, I think, than we're aware of. And when you see countries like Ireland with 300 billion, the Cayman Islands with 260 or something billion, and you start to go, hang on, why are these countries having such a high amount of treasuries? I mean, Brazil, another example, 270 odd billion, I think. This just doesn't stack up or make any sense. So everything else is manipulated. So why wouldn't the treasury figures be manipulated?
Right, exactly.
Yes, the Walmart article, V, yes. Walmart for so long has been probably the biggest price manipulator in terms of retail pricing. You can easily witness that when a super Walmart moves in to a community, in particular, some of the smaller cities across the United States, they will purposely drive down their opening prices are anywhere between 10 to 15%, anyone in the neighborhood, just so that they can close the remaining businesses in town. And then slowly, as businesses die off and everything, they begin to to raise their prices, and that's a known Walmart strategy. It's also a known Walmart strategy that when you walk into a Walmart, there are big bulk areas that mentally you perceive are their best buys because they're huge stacks and their pricing. Typically, you can go back to their core departments and find lower price points than what they have at their front door. It's just that visual, right? That visual merchandising that they do. So now we're witnessing that online, V. So they're taking a different approach. Walmart has really struggled, and I've been in. I had a local grocery store that closed, was one of my favorites. So now I'm kind of forced in one area that I go. I have to go to a super Walmart. And when you go in, V, it's just amazing. They'll have 32 registers across the front, and there'll be 2 people running those registers, but their huge self-checkout area will have 15, and there'll be 50 people in line. So Walmart's really struggling. So now what they're doing to try to drive more retail into brick and mortar, they're strategically looking at their online prices on some staple items, Kraft macaroni, and they're purposely raising the prices higher online just in hopes of driving people to brick and mortar. Now, Walmart's come out and said it's just they're doing it specifically because it's items that are just not cost effective to buy and to ship online. However, I think it is in part of a bigger strategy by Walmart, and everyone knows, how big Walmart is. And when you look across the retail sector and pricing and everything, how much Walmart plays into that, globally.
Yeah, exactly correct. Exactly correct. Clear contrast in geopolitical leadership. We have it's amazing. I mean, we talked about the Trump Asia trip before we went live. Paul, what's your take on this? As Putin and Trump were in Da Nang, Vietnam, and they were talking, and it was very nice and courteous to one toward another. For somebody like me looking at this, I like it. It looks very positive. What is your take, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that there was all this idea that they didn't have any conversation together. Well, they did, but I mean, it's pretty obvious now that Trump just can't afford to be seen to be talking to Putin for more than 5 seconds, because half of America will have a meltdown, and the DNC and the Democrats will be filing the next impeachment suit or trying to open a new investigation. So they have to very much keep it quiet. There were constructive conversation. I think there's a lot of broad agreement between them in terms of Syria and North Korea. The problem we come back to is Trump's problem is the anti kind of, or the Russophobic kind of attitude that exists, and how it makes it very difficult. But the bottom line is, and this, there's been a lot of talk about Trump's trip to the Far East, and it all seemed very positive in principle. The bottom line for China and Russia is quite simple with regards to Trump. If you cooperate and work with us, we'll bend over backwards to help you. However, if you're through no fault of your own, if your administration decides to do the contrary and tries to, basically, I'm not trying to think of a polite adjective, but basically try to screw the Chinese and the Russians over, we'll take you down. It's as simple as that. And Trump fully understands this. I mean, he will do everything he can to change the emphasis of how America approaches things. It is very difficult for him. You've already heard the stupid, ridiculous backlash coming from the likes of Brennan with regards to his conversation, because effectively Trump said, well, if Putin says we haven't interfered in the election, I believe it. Well, we know it's true, but of course that just infuriates people in the US, and people like Brennan was one example. But yeah, I think there is encouraging sign. That the difficult part, and always has been, is this draining the swamp and removing the elements in Washington who have no desire to formulate any relations, just want to impose their will through US hegemony. I think that is certainly decreasing, and I am cautiously optimistic that we'll see moves in the not too distant future. Not putting any timescales on it, not too distant, could be a month, a couple of months. It might be longer, but it doesn't matter, that those problems are being addressed. And so, yeah, the body language between Putin and Trump was very, very telling. I mean, the Chinese tend to be, they're more kind of conservative. They don't tend to give a lot away, but you could see there was genuine warmth with each other. And yeah, there are encouraging signs, and Trump knows the score. Putin knows the score. It's just how quickly, Trump can actually wrestle control. And he's had numerous attempts and failed, not through a want of trying, but I think what I refer to as Plan B. Plan B is very much underway now, and I think it's starting to reap some benefit. And people have complained for a long time, well, we need to see some high-profile arrests. There's a lot of rumors about sealed indictments, and yes, there is a lot of credibility to that. I think there is possibly one or two pretty big names in the offing that may or may not be indicted in the not too distant future. And I think that will go a long way, not into satisfying people that something's been done, but it's a big, if it happened in the UK, you had a huge name of somebody, it's going to wake the populace up massively. And they're then going to go, hang on, what exactly has been going on? And when you figure in the whole Weinstein thing, which I think is just the start of something pretty big to be opened up in that regard, that's one way you're going to wake up the masses of any country, because when they realize the extent of what's gone on in that regard, that's a surefire way to wake people up. So hopefully there's a sort of a positive snowball effect happening in the US, and that can feed on the back of undoubtedly that China and Russia will cooperate, but it comes at a price, and there's some big concessions. It's just how quickly Trump's able to fulfill those concessions. I mean, ordinarily, if it was just you and I running a country and being a proper democracy, he wouldn't have a problem, but we know all the reasons why he has these problems.
Yep, absolutely. It's massive, man. And over here, speaking of President Xi, we have over here that Vietnam and President Xi was lauding. Excuse me, I'm just trying to clear my throat. That Vietnam and China are forged together in blood, and it's amazing to see this entire geopolitical nexus. Like the whole world is moving forward, and we in the West have nothing to offer except paper bond fraud, dollar fraud, bombing other nations, disruptions, and chaos. Paul, it's unbelievable, to say the least.
Well, it is true, and I know we unfortunately seem to pick on the US rather a lot, but if you just look at the whole debacle with the way the UK and Europe's handled Brexit, I mean, it might be largely academic, but it's actually been a real big eye-opener for people to see how childish people can behave and how utterly incompetent they are, because there's nothing complicated about Britain leaving the European Union. It's very straightforward. If you actually had some sensible adults sat at the table, you could negotiate a settlement and leave within a month or two. It's not complicated, but it's dragged on for months, and with no real solution, just political point scoring. That's what everyone does in the West. It's all about dissing the other political party, even though they're both irrelevant because they don't really form their own government anyway. Whereas you see what Russia and China are doing, and you mentioned Vietnam, absolutely, and this is all they do, and the West just sits there doing what it does well, which is basically nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to the end of the program.
No, just real quick, V, in terms of, just the amount of, Paul, you said about childish, and it's so accurate that when you take a look at the American media and how responsible they have been in terms of the dumbing down of society. Here we have this huge meeting, a lot of transition geopolitical aspects, but all you hear in the dying American news empire is that talked to Putin twice about interfering in the election, and Putin assured him he didn't, so Trump said that it was okay. That's all you heard in the media. So they're the ones responsible for the dumbing down of society.
Exactly.
But it's the same in the UK. I mean, there is a little bit more journalism, but the problem is we're actually got the kind of reverse, where some of the mainstream media has gone so far the wrong way. It's like now they're reporting everything like it's World War III is going to happen tomorrow. So and so is doing something. It's World War III, and that is a huge problem. So there's the flip side, where as much as you can start to address real world problems, there's no point going the opposite extreme and instead of dumbing people down, terrifying them in the process.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, we are getting geared up. In a few hours, we'll be unleashed. I'll be fully locked and loaded on caffeine. Paul, I know he's going to be late for you, but I know you're going to be on.
Oh no, it's only 5 p.m. That's not late. It's I might eat my dinner a bit late, but and anyone who knows me and food will know that. But no, I'm joking. I mean, I am genuinely really looking forward to it. I know I'm not the most sort of outgoing person, but I am very much looking forward to it. And I think it will raise a lot of interesting points and different viewpoints. And sometimes you can go away from these conversations and it triggers something else off in your thought process. So that's an excellent thing. And yeah, I think it's going to be, and it's something, we can look to do again in the future with people, for sure,
absolutely.
on different subject matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're literally documenting the transition. It's very important that we do that.
Absolutely. Yep. So, CJ, why don't you again tell the audience real quick the time and place when this great event's about to kick off?
Absolutely. 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a roundtable format. We're going to try to take to the approach, give each guest anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes, kind of, provide their insights, maybe 5 minutes of, some discussion. Definitely want to afford the time to everyone to share their valuable input. We're going to be streaming this live about everywhere: YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, Steemit, Facebook, you name it, you'll be able to find this. So do us a favor, share this broadcast. It's going to be very important that we get as many listeners to help, educate them around this shift that's occurring, V.
Yep, absolutely. And with that being said, folks, in a few hours, get ready, fasten your seatbelts, get your helmets on, get a delicious snack and some dark roast. We are off and running. With that being said, CJ, take it away.